Donald Trump believed he could silence Jasmine Crockett with his usual confidence, but within a minute, she placed documents on the table that stopped him completely. The morning began normally in Washington, yet for Trump, it was already becoming a risky day. He was in the Oval Office before dawn, blinds closed tightly. The room carried the heavy mix of coffee and pressure. On the resolute desk lay a leather folder filled with papers labeled confidential. Trump flipped through them quickly, eyes scanning signatures, contract timelines, and wire transfer totals. Every page carried the same issue, his name beside Ivanka's, tied to business deals never meant for public view. He tapped one document, the one showing an offshore account linked to an overseas construction project. That project had been publicly described as Ivanka's idea alone, yet his signature sat directly beneath hers. "Get rid of these," Trump ordered, not lifting his eyes. A White House aide, tense and pale, hesitated. "Sir, these are originals. I said get rid of them." Trump's tone cut through the room. "Shred them, burn them. Doesn't matter. But no one sees these, especially her." Her meant Jasmine Crockett. 4 months, Jasmine had been trying to connect Trump's private deals, but each lead ended abruptly. Evidence disappeared, testimonies shifted, and paper trails went dark. But Jasmine didn't give up. She understood that the truth had its own weight, and if she could reveal it, it would break apart every lie protecting it. That same morning, she sat in her office across town, drinking tea while reviewing another file stack when her chief investigator rushed in. "You need to see this." He placed a thick envelope on her desk. Inside were copies of the documents Trump had just reviewed. His signature, Ivanka's, project numbers, bank routing details. Everything was there in clear print. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "Anonymous delivery. No name, no address, just this." Jasmine leaned back, studying each page. "If this is legitimate, it unravels the entire story." Her investigator nodded. "There's more. A photo." He slid a glossy image forward. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. It showed Trump at a long table in what looked like a luxury hotel overseas, pen in hand. Ivanka sat beside him, smiling as she pushed papers toward him. 2 foreign officials stood behind them, watching both signatures go down. Jasmine placed the photo alongside the documents. "He's been insisting Ivanka had no involvement in these deals, and now we have proof they signed together." She moved quickly. Calls were made, files prepared, and by noon she secured time to present the evidence in a closed committee session. One Trump had been required to attend. Word reached the White House fast. "She has something," an aide told Trump. "What?" Trump demanded. "Documents and a photo." For a moment, Trump's eyes narrowed, the expression he wore when he felt pressure. He tightened his jaw, then forced a smile. "She's bluffing. She has nothing." But he knew this marked the start of something he couldn't fully control. When the meeting began, the room filled with stiff silence. Trump entered with familiar confidence, greeting allies sharply, but his gaze kept returning to the folder in front of Jasmine. She sat calmly, posture straight, expression controlled, her hands resting on the folder like it carried everything the room needed to know. The chairman opened the session and signaled to Jasmine. She stood, took a steady breath, and began without hesitation. "Mr. President," she said, meeting his eyes, "I have proof that you and Ivanka Trump were directly involved in foreign contracts you claimed under oath she had no part in. These are your signatures. This is your photograph. This is the truth you attempted to hide." The room froze. Trump leaned forward, lips curling. "Lies. All of it." But Jasmine remained firm. She placed the first document on the table for all to see. His name in black ink stood out sharply, an accusation that could no longer be concealed. The folder in front of Jasmine looked plain, brown and worn, but in that committee room, it spoke louder than anything else. Trump sat across from her, appearing relaxed, as if he controlled the environment. But Jasmine saw the tension in his jaw every few seconds. He was calculating, waiting to counter. "Miss Crockett, you may continue," the chairman said. Jasmine stepped forward slowly, sliding out a single page. She didn't look at it, she kept her eyes on Trump. "Mr. President, you swore Ivanka had no role in the Royal Crescent Tower agreement. You said she stayed away from the negotiations. This," she said, holding up the document, "is your signature beneath hers, approving a $48 million transfer to a foreign development partner. Trump leaned forward with a smirk. Documents can be faked, Jasmine. You know that. I agree, she replied evenly. Which is why I also have the security photo from the signing. You, Ivanka, and 2 foreign ministers. Same papers, same day, same deal. The room shifted. Whispers spread. Trump waved a hand. A staged photo means nothing. This is another witch hunt. You've been after me for years. Maybe try doing your actual job instead of chasing nonsense. Jasmine ignored the remark. She handed the photo to the clerk, who projected it on the screen. It was clear, Trump and Ivanka leaning over documents in a luxury suite. The chairman turned to Trump. Mr. President, is that you? His smirk slipped for a second. It's doctored. Jasmine was prepared. She pulled out the next item. A hotel registry from that same date. 2 presidential suites booked under Donald J. Trump and Ivanka Trump. Security detail listed. These were obtained legally from public business records. Trump slammed a hand on the table. This is absurd. You want to label me a criminal? You don't know who you're dealing with. Jasmine stepped closer, voice steady but sharper. On the contrary, Mr. President, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A man who hides behind authority, who treats loyalty as silence, and who uses his own family when convenient. The air tightened. Trump glared. Careful, Crockett. Careful, she replied. The only one who should be cautious is the person pretending these documents don't exist. An aide leaned in to whisper to Trump, but he dismissed them and continued staring at her. You think people will believe you? You're irrelevant. I'm the president. Jasmine smiled faintly. And yet you're the one unsettled by someone you claim is irrelevant. The chairman tapped his gavel. Order. Miss Crockett, do you have more evidence? Yes, she said, reaching into the folder again. But before I continue, I want something understood. I do not bring claims without proof. I'm not here to guess. I'm here to present facts. And the fact is Ivanka Trump was not uninvolved. She was your partner. And there is one detail you would prefer remain hidden. Trump shifted in his seat, shoulders tightening. You're bluffing. Jasmine stepped forward slowly, lowering her voice so the room leaned in. Mr. President, she is not your biological daughter. A wave of shock swept the room. Trump's face went pale, then flushed. That's insane. Jasmine did not react. Is it? Or is that why you tried so hard to keep every document and transaction buried? Because this isn't just about money. It's about identity. It's about lies that go deeper than anyone expected. For the first time, Trump didn't reply. He leaned back, lips pressed tightly, eyes narrowed but silent. Jasmine allowed the quiet to stretch across the room before returning to her seat. The folder remained open, more papers still inside. This wasn't finished, not even close. The moment hit like a sudden shock, leaving the entire room frozen. Cameras fired in rapid bursts. Staff shifted uneasily, murmuring into their phones. Trump sat still, but the tension in his posture exposed him. His hand gripped the table so tightly that his knuckles whitened. For a man known for never losing control, this was the first visible fracture. Jasmine Crockett recognized it. She didn't confront him right away. He expected an immediate attack. Instead, she let the silence stretch, forcing him to sit with it. Then she leaned back, opened her folder, and removed a thicker bundle of documents. This, she said clearly, is a record of financial transactions between the Royal Crescent Tower project and offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Each account is tied through beneficiary codes, and one of those codes connects directly to Ivanka Trump's passport. Trump's head jerked toward her. That's a lie. Jasmine didn't react. Then explain why your private attorney approved those wire transfers. Explain why the amounts were split into irregular sums, low enough to avoid automatic reporting but totaling more than 100 million over 18 months. The chairman raised an eyebrow. Miss Crockett, are you implying? I'm not implying, Jasmine cut in. I'm showing. She placed the papers flat and slid them toward the clerk. These aren't guesses. They're bank records from an independent audit, confirmed by federal oversight. Trump gave a short laugh, sharp and empty. So what? A man can't support his daughter? That's what this is. You can't stand that my family succeeds. Jasmine's expression sharpened. That's the issue, Mr. President. If she isn't biologically your daughter, she's not family. She's a business partner. Which means these payments weren't personal. They were payouts. And under federal law, payouts must be disclosed. A ripple of gasps moved through the room. The clerk circulated the documents, and each committee member leaned in, examining signatures and official stamps. Trump reclined slightly, trying to regain his usual posture, but the shadows under his eyes had deepened. You think the public cares about old bank forms? He snapped. They love me. They always will. Jasmine didn't respond. Instead, she turned to the next piece of evidence. A sworn statement from a former Trump Organization executive. It described a private meeting where Trump allegedly instructed Ivanka to use a false birth certificate as leverage to secure political immunity in case of a financial probe. The room murmured with disbelief. One committee member set the document down slowly, as if it were too heavy to keep holding. Trump pointed at Jasmine. This is character assassination. You're a disgrace. She met his glare without flinching. If revealing the truth is disgraceful, then I accept that. You built your empire on deception. You turned loyalty into a shield. And now, you're hiding behind a lie large enough to undo everything you've claimed to be. Trump tried to speak, but his voice faltered. The hesitation was brief but noticeable, and the entire room caught it. Jasmine noticed too. She closed her folder partway. I have more, she said, her voice steady. More than enough to show that the man in that chair isn't just dishonest. He's dangerous. And the woman you've called your daughter, she isn't who you claim she is, and never was. Trump's expression twisted between anger and fear. For once, he didn't interrupt. He sat rigidly, lips pressed tight. Jasmine turned to the chairman. I'm prepared to move to the next phase of questioning. The chairman nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on Trump. Proceed. Everyone in the room felt it. The balance had shifted. Trump's confidence had cracked, and Jasmine Crockett was pressing directly on the fault line. This was no longer just about proving a lie. It was about pulling the thread that could unravel Donald Trump completely. The hearing room seemed smaller now. The walls felt closer, the air heavier. Trump sat stiffly, his usual bravado stripped away. The documents on the table weren't just paper. They were a tightening trap. Jasmine adjusted her microphone, watching him closely. She could sense the desperation beneath his polished exterior. Mr. President, she began, calm but firm, everything I'm about to present has been confirmed through 3 separate sources. Federal auditors, international banking regulators, and sworn testimony from individuals directly involved. She opened another folder, revealing a grainy but clear photograph. Trump and Ivanka in a dim room, stacks of cash between them. The date stamp aligned with the Cayman Islands transfer timeline. Gasps spread through the room. Trump leaned forward, squinting as if disbelief alone could erase the image. Fake, he snapped. AI, Photoshop, whatever nonsense you people use. Jasmine lifted a brow. Interesting, because the original file came from the secure server of your former CFO. He provided metadata proving the photo came from a phone registered to your personal number. Trump's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to his attorneys, who looked almost as pale as the marble pillars. Jasmine slid another sheet forward. This, Mr. President, is a handwritten ledger. You'll see the initials DT repeated, along with cash withdrawal notes labeled Family Fund. Would you like to explain? Trump forced a harsh laugh. Family Fund means family business. Every businessman has one. Jasmine continued smoothly. Except that the family here isn't legally related, and the fund was used to move money through shell corporations. That's money laundering, plain and simple. The chairman leaned in. Do you have proof of the shell corporations? Jasmine produced incorporation documents, each tied to proxies connected to Trump Organization legal staff. These entities dissolved within a year of receiving funds. No legitimate operations. No tax reports. Just accounts that opened, received large transfers, and disappeared. Trump shifted, raising his voice. This is a witch hunt. You're obsessed with destroying me because I win. Jasmine's tone stayed neutral. If winning means deceiving, stealing, and violating public trust, Then yes, you've excelled. Silence settled again. Cameras clicked softly. Papers rustled. Tension thickened. She withdrew one final document. A notarized affidavit from a protected witness. The witness stated that Trump personally admitted Ivanka was not his biological daughter, and that the truth was concealed to protect business arrangements tied to her public image. This isn't about your personal life, Jasmine said, her voice cutting through the room. It's about how you used that false narrative. You presented her as family to cover questionable transfers. You leveraged that image to shield both of you from scrutiny. You sold the public a manufactured story, and you profited from it. Trump's face had turned red, his voice cracking as he shouted, "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just a nobody trying to make a name for yourself through me." Jasmine leaned in slightly, her tone low but precise. "I don't need a name, Mr. President. The truth stands on its own, and right now it's louder than ever." The chairman struck the gavel once, but it didn't lessen the impact of what had just unfolded. Trump had been pinned down. His usual bravado failed him. Each claim was matched with documentation. Every denial was met with verified evidence. Across the room, aides whispered anxiously. Even Trump's strongest supporters avoided looking at him. For the first time in the hearing, Donald Trump appeared diminished, and Jasmine Crockett recognized it. This was the instant his defenses finally cracked. The chairman's gavel echoed again, but the sound barely touched the tension in the room. Trump sat stiffly, gripping the table until his knuckles went white. His jaw was locked, his lips drawn into a thin line. The confidence he had displayed earlier had vanished. Jasmine Crockett didn't rush. She understood the strength of silence. The pause after a critical moment often carried more impact than the moment itself. She adjusted her papers slowly, intentionally, letting the truth settle heavily over the room. Then she looked directly at Trump. "Mr. President," she said calmly, "you have denied, deflected, and insulted your way through this hearing. But what you haven't done, what you can't do, is dispute the evidence. You cannot undo your own signature. You cannot explain the shell companies. And you cannot hide from the fact that you lied about something deeply personal, your own child." Trump's face twitched, but he remained silent. His attorney sat motionless, hands hovering over their notes as though they had stopped defending him altogether. Jasmine reached into her folder once more and pulled out a thick packet. The cover displayed the U.S. Treasury Department seal. She slid it across to the chairman, who lifted his brows slightly at the title page. "This," she said, "is a complete forensic review of the offshore accounts." Trump leaned forward, squinting at the accompanying photo as if disbelief alone could erase it. "Fake," he snapped. "It's fake, AI, Photoshop, whatever you call it." Jasmine lifted one eyebrow. "Interesting, considering the original is saved on the secure server of your former CFO. And the metadata confirms the photo was taken on a phone registered to your personal number." Trump's jaw tightened. His eyes darted briefly toward his lawyers, who looked as pale as the marble columns behind them. Jasmine pushed another sheet forward. "This, Mr. President, is a handwritten ledger. You'll see the repeated initials, DT. You'll also see notes for cash withdrawals labeled Family Fund. Would you like to explain that?" Trump let out a short, forced laugh. "Family Fund means family business. Everyone has something like that." Jasmine didn't hesitate. "Except when the family involved is legally unrelated and the funds are used to move money through shell entities. That, Mr. President, is money laundering. Plain and direct." The chairman leaned closer. "Do you have proof of the shell corporations?" Jasmine reached back into the folder, pulling out incorporation documents, each signed by proxies linked to the Trump Organization's legal team. All of these companies dissolved within a year of receiving funds. No real operations. No tax filings. Just accounts that opened, received large transfers, and disappeared. Trump shifted in his seat but raised his voice, trying to regain control. "This is a witch hunt. You're all obsessed with tearing me down because I'm better than you. Because I win." Jasmine's expression didn't change. "If you define winning as stealing, misleading, and violating public trust, then yes, you've succeeded." The room fell silent again. Light camera clicks and the soft movement of papers filled the background. Jasmine pulled out one final document. an affidavit notarized and redacted to protect the witness. In it, the witness stated that Trump admitted privately that Ivanka was not his biological daughter, and that the truth was suppressed to protect financial arrangements tied to her public role. "This isn't about your personal life," Jasmine said, her tone turning colder. "This is about how you used that lie. You introduced her as family to hide questionable transfers. You used that image to shield both of you from oversight. You sold the American public a false narrative, and you benefited from it." Trump's face reddened again and he shouted, "You don't know anything. You're a nobody trying to rise at my expense." Jasmine leaned slightly closer, her voice sharp but controlled. "I don't need recognition, Mr. President. The truth is already loud." The chairman struck the gavel again, but it did nothing to break the intensity of the moment. Trump was cornered. His usual tactics had failed. Each claim was backed by evidence. Each counterclaim dismantled by documents. Across the room, aides whispered urgently. Even Trump's loyal defenders avoided his eyes. For the first time, Donald Trump looked diminished, and Jasmine knew his facade had cracked completely. The chairman's gavel echoed faintly, barely touching the heavy tension. Trump sat rigid, clenching the table so tightly his knuckles were pale. His jaw remained locked, lips drawn tight. The confidence he carried earlier had disappeared. Jasmine didn't hurry. She valued the weight of a pause. She arranged her papers slowly, giving the room time to acknowledge the truth hanging over it. Then she looked at Trump again. "Mr. President," she said evenly, "you have denied, deflected, and insulted your way through this hearing. But what you still haven't done is challenge the evidence. You can't remove your own signature. You can't explain the shell companies. And you can't dismiss the lie about something as personal as your own child." Trump's face twitched, but he stayed silent. His lawyer seemed frozen. Jasmine retrieved another packet from her folder, sealed with the Treasury Department insignia. She slid it toward the chairman, who examined the cover. "This," she said, "is a full financial analysis of the offshore accounts." Trump's hand tightened on the table, his knuckles white. For someone who prided himself on staying in control, this was a visible break. Jasmine noticed but didn't pressure him. She let the silence expand, letting him feel its weight. Then she leaned back and pulled out a thicker stack of documents. "This," she said clearly, "is a detailed record of transactions between the Royal Crescent Tower project and offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Each account is linked by beneficiary codes, one of which connects directly to Ivanka Trump's passport." Trump snapped his head up. "That's false." Jasmine remained steady. "Then explain why your private attorney approved the transfers. Explain why the amounts were broken into irregular figures, small enough to dodge automatic reporting, yet totaling more than $100 million over 18 months. The chairman narrowed his eyes. "Miss Crockett, are you implying?" "I'm not implying," Jasmine said, cutting him off. "I'm presenting verified evidence." She placed the papers flat on the table. "These aren't theories. They are bank records from an independent audit, cross-checked with federal regulators." Trump let out a hollow laugh. "So what? A father can't help his daughter? That's what this is. You hate that my family succeeds." Jasmine's eyes sharpened. "That's the issue, Mr. President. If she isn't your daughter, then she isn't family. She is a business partner. Which means these payments were not personal. They were corporate payouts. And payouts must be reported." More murmurs filled the room. Committee members leaned forward, scanning signatures and stamped pages. Trump leaned back, trying to regain a posture of authority, but the shadows under his eyes had deepened. "You think people will care about old bank records?" he asked. "They love me. They always will." Jasmine didn't react. She moved to the next exhibit, a sworn statement from a former Trump Organization executive. The testimony described a private meeting where Trump allegedly told Ivanka to use a falsified birth certificate as political protection if financial investigations emerged. The room stirred with disbelief. One committee member set the document down slowly, as if afraid to hold it. Trump pointed at Jasmine. "This is character assassination. You're harming the country." She held his gaze. "If exposing the truth is harmful, then I'll accept that label. You built your empire on misrepresentation. You turned loyalty into leverage. And now you're hiding behind a lie so large it threatens the core of everything you've presented to the public. Trump tried to respond, but his voice caught. That brief hesitation spread a ripple across the room. Everyone saw it. Jasmine saw it. She closed the folder slightly. I have additional evidence, she said, her voice cold. And it's already sufficient to show that the man seated here isn't simply dishonest. He presents a serious risk. And the woman you've called your daughter, she is not who you claim she is. Trump's expression shifted between anger and fear, but he didn't interrupt. He remained still, shoulders tense, lips pressed shut. Jasmine turned to the chairman. I'm prepared to continue to the next phase. The chairman nodded, his gaze fixed on Trump. Proceed. It was obvious to everyone. The balance had shifted. Trump's confidence was collapsing, and Jasmine Crockett had struck at the core. This was no longer only about proving a lie. It was about unraveling the structure Donald Trump had built around himself. The hearing room felt tighter, the air heavier. Trump sat rigid, stripped of his usual confidence. The documents before him were more than paper. They were a slowly closing trap. Jasmine adjusted her microphone, eyes locked on him. She could sense the worry beneath his controlled exterior. Mr. President, she began, voice steady but firm, I want the record to reflect that everything I'm presenting has been authenticated through 3 independent sources. Federal auditors, international banking regulators, and sworn testimony from individuals directly involved. She tapped a folder, opening it with deliberate care. Inside was a grainy but clear photo, Trump and Ivanka in a dim room, stacks of cash on the table. The timestamp matched the Cayman transfer period. The room murmured in shock. Trump leaned forward, squinting. Fake. It's fake. AI or Photoshop? Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Strange, considering the original is on your former CFO's secure server. The metadata shows the image was taken with a phone linked to your personal account. Trump's eyes flicked to his lawyers, who looked nearly as pale as the room's columns. Jasmine slid another page forward. This is the handwritten ledger. Note the initials, DT. Note the entries for cash withdrawals and the phrase, family fund. Care to clarify? Trump gave a flat, humorless laugh. Family business. Everyone has one. Jasmine didn't pause. Not when the family has no legal ties and the funds move through shell companies. That is money laundering. The chairman leaned in. Proof of the shell companies? Jasmine produced incorporation records, each signed by proxies tied to Trump's legal team.